Continue recording. Hello there. So we've had some technical issues. It's been a great time dealing with technology. We're hoping to be back, but for now, we are just gonna, keep going. And this week we are talking about international SEO, getting your website found on different countries, and we're gonna talk about, you know, uh, different domain structures, different ways you can, different apps that can help you with this stuff, and what's the best strategy for making sure you get found in other countries. And my name is Phelan with Seymour Digital Media.
And I'm Rena from Little Works Indie Media. And this is a topic that I'm super interested in. It's not something that I have a lot of familiarity with, but I do have a client that I need to organize for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to start off with a few questions, Phelan, and you can
Yeah.
sort of let us know what you're thinking. So, what I'm understanding is that the strategy really needs to match the type of company that you have.
Yeah.
So, understanding if you are one company that has multiple offices in different parts of the world, if you
Mm-hmm.
are one company that sells products to other parts of the world, if you are a company that has representative agreements in other parts of the world, it's all going to be slightly different, right?
Yeah. But I think that's a really good jumping off point, is because, like, if you have, depending on the structure of your business, that's going to define how you're going to structure how these websites are all going to interact, or if it's just one website, if it's going to be localized domains. So, like, different, because different countries have different top level domains. So,
Yeah,
Amazon in Germany is amazon.de. Amazon in France
yeah,
is amazon.fr, right? And so, but it's still technically kind of one company. So that's really going to determine how you start to break down, are they having their own website and they're connecting back to us when it comes to, like, maybe the products or
yeah.
specific services.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so I just want to get into maybe some specifics for those. So if we were
Mm-hmm.
going to, for example, my client has representative agreements, and I've been wondering about how to organize the Google My Business listing page, because as we all know from previous sessions, that's a super important piece of local SEO. So would it be fine for me, the representatives that or are organized with this company, they have their own websites with different names, business names on them. So it's not going to actually correlate directly to our website, and we're not going to be really linking the primary domain, like our website, as their
Yeah.
primary domain spot. But I was thinking that we could organize our products on their Google business listing and directly link to our web page or my client's web page. Does that work for representatives?
That's how I would structure it when I'm looking at, the way you kind of describe that, that if there's like
Mhm.
local affiliates and then they still link back to your website. The one thing I would put in with that would make sure that you have UTM parameters on your products. So if they do link back to you, you can
All
find out,
right,
like,
that's good.
yeah, so you'd have the UTM parameters still on there, because
Yeah,
then you could see it's like, oh, it's our London office sent us like a bunch of leads and those actually
right,
converted, or whatever the case may be. At least you can
right.
add some additional tracking from there. You can
Okay.
even go so far as to have it not just source and medium. You can also do UTM also includes like content,
Mhm.
keyword. Like, you can have all kinds of spots where you can put in additional campaign is another one as well. So you can actually get really granular detail on how you
Right.
set up those UTM parameters.
So we should almost have a session for Geek Speak on how to set up UTM UTM links for
Yeah.
people, because I think that that's actually one of the things that is a super great tool and is generally highly underused
Oh,
by most businesses.
absolutely. I would say that most people I mean, I always underestimated the power of how granular you can get them to be. There's also tools when there used to be Google Optimize. You could, sorry, this
Mhm,
is now a slight tangent, but yeah, Google Optimize had a whole thing where you could actually change
mhm.
the page based on a UTM parameter. So
Right.
you could do cool
All
stuff
right,
with
I
that.
see. So serving up different pages to different people depending on where they came from.
Well, their example was like a coupon code. So if they
Oh, I
clicked on a
see. Okay,
specific
great.
email, the coupon code wouldn't show up unless they clicked on that email. That email when they
Oh, I
went,
see.
yeah, yeah,
So it was link specific, the coupon code, so people can't
yeah,
just put it up in Honey and share it.
yeah, exactly,
That's
exactly.
okay, that's interesting. All
But
right, so
yes,
then if you actually had offices in many places, then you would just set up a second location in your Google business listing, and it's fairly straightforward, correct?
yeah, I would just set up like a, verify like the London office, and then it has its
Mhm.
own location, and then it's just going to be like my business slash UK, or
Yeah,
some like some identifier that makes it the UK. But basically,
okay.
you're setting up a Google Business profile for that, and then from there, if it's like different branch offices, then you might just have the London page as the website page that they're verifying with, and
Oh, I
so
see. Okay, that sounds good. And then, okay, so then that reminds me then, what about if your branch is in another language? So for example, if we had a Quebec branch and it was primarily French or somewhere else in the world, would how would you handle the website in that case? What would you recommend?
So what I've done, I have a client that has does a lot of work in Quebec. They do a lot of sales in Quebec, and so what the way they handle it is that they actually have a subdomain. So they have fr dot name
Oh,
of their
right. So
website,
FR being the language.
the language, and then it's
Okay.
all written in French. It's been
Okay.
reviewed by they had a local sales guy who handles all the Quebec sales, and so he
Okay.
knows. And since he's perfectly bilingual, he was the perfect guy to do the translation. And so we just kind of gave him they gave him the website copy. He did that, and then what they do is he put a special tag in the top of the website, and it's called a HREFLANG, so a reflang, meaning that
Yeah.
this the language of this link is FR, meaning French. So you do the same ES as Spanish, DE German, um, and so you could map that out. And what happens is that Google will take your browser, because when you set it up, they ask you what language do you speak, and
Yeah.
so it does language detection off of that, and so it will serve up. If you have a French version, an English version of your website, and I've
Mhm.
selected French for my language, it's going to naturally serve up the French version of your website.
So so that will get your pages indexed on French, like there's a separate Google French index then is what you're saying.
Yes,
Okay.
what Google, yeah. So Neil Patel, probably like it's coming on almost a decade now, was always big about internationalization of his
Mhm.
website. So he would have someone translate it into each version. Like I think he had 16 different versions of his website,
Mhm.
and so he would have it in Brazilian Portuguese. He would have it in Spanish, and it's because there was a lot less competition for naturally written
Yes. Yes.
in other languages. But he gets all of like the SEO juice from that.
That
So
makes sense because English is the primary language of business, I think. So there's a lot of English websites.
yeah,
Um, so okay, so then that brings me to ask you about businesses. Like, do you need to, if you're going to do that as a strategy, I mean, you really need to be doing business in that language, correct? That's the right assumption?
yeah, you generally,
Okay.
in most cases, if you don't speak the language, or if you have no intent to follow that market, like
Yeah.
don't do that,
Okay.
because it's just, well, what are you going to do once you've got that business, right? Like you're just going to be like, well, I don't understand Spanish. Like that doesn't isn't going to
Yeah.
serve you well.
It's gonna be
Like,
hard to do,
yeah,
yeah, it's
it,
yeah, especially if you're a service-oriented business. If you're products, it might be a little bit different.
yeah,
Um,
or if you're
alright.
Neil Patel, right, where he's just trying to get traffic and then he makes money off of
Mm,
AdSense off of that, then that's a
right,
totally
right.
different story altogether, because his intent is
Yes.
like, I just need traffic. Like I just need people to
Yeah,
come here.
because he's doing like he's getting kickbacks from product sales that are done in people's languages. So he's actually just affiliate marketing type things. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's like
Okay. Okay.
that makes sense in that
Yeah.
context. So if you're doing content and
Yeah.
it's kind of has that it can be international, then yeah, definitely look at that route. But again, if you don't have the manpower or the people power and the resources that to actually like go off of that, well, don't spend that effort on getting all that stuff translated, or Also, because like Google Translate, I think we were talking about, this leads us into another part of like translating a website. When to do that, because that's a big one, because it's a lot of work to get it, and you can, Google Translate is a easy option, but it's not
Yeah.
always the right option, because you may have specific things that you need to say about your products that, if it's in another language or it gets translated, it may, lose
Yeah,
something
some
in
things
translation.
don't yeah, some things get lost in translation. That's I guess that's a whole movie, isn't it? But
Yeah.
yeah, I've had that we used Google Translate for a site that we did a few years ago, and the feedback that I got from the tester reading it was that it was pretty good, but it wasn't perfect, but meaning was absolutely made and enough to do business.
Yeah.
And they also had the owner was able to do business in that language, so it worked for their purposes because it was a very inexpensive solution for them to start out with.
Yeah.
So if you're going to start out with Google Translate, that's one thing, and then I guess if you really want to get in on the keyword juice, you probably want to translate your pages. Would you
Yeah.
is
you,
that
you,
fair to say?
you want someone that can speak the language
Yeah.
a like conversational level. Like that's definitely highly recommended if you are going after that kind of business, because
Yeah.
again, there may be certain keywords that, it's all context specific, right? So
Yeah.
certain keywords may only make sense, or
Mhm.
that like there may be an idiom, right? Like
Well, yeah,
people.
there's also differences in locality. So, for
Mhm.
example, Quebecois is not the same as France French, even though they're technically French.
Yeah.
They're not exactly the same. So you can tell a writer from Quebec and a writer from Paris
Yeah,
or Lyon or
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, there's an
Um,
old joke. Sorry, just quick aside. There's an old joke
mhm.
of a French major and a British major in the trenches, and the French major says to the British guy, "What are those guys speaking over there? I don't understand them." And they're like, "You don't understand them? They're speaking French." And they were Quebecois, because they
Yeah,
were dressed in like the British uniform, but they
yeah,
spoke Quebecois French, and they just couldn't make hide nor hair of what they were saying. So
yeah.
it's absolutely, yeah, very all localization, and also like even learning stuff about, like, if you hear people that are from Mexico, they use a lot of slang in there, so they you can translate what they say perfectly fine as like into English, but it wouldn't make sense because it's like listening to British people speak, or they use a lot of
Yeah.
idioms like Cockney English and all that kind of stuff, where it's like technically
And
all
yeah,
English words.
yeah, so even sentence structures are different and different, you
Yeah.
don't translate directly. That's the whole thing, and that's how you can tell someone who's fluent doesn't translate when they speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. So then that brought me to the idea of like working with keywords in Search Console. So basically, Search Console is not going to separate the English to the French. So there's no spot to go look at your French and your other languages, but it'll just
Nope.
show up on the rankings as usual as a page would. And but then the context is that it's being indexed, your French is being indexed amongst other French pages, and your English is indexed among other English pages. Is that basically what I'm understanding correctly?
Yeah, I mean that's I've seen it happen before, where we've had search results, like very few that I've had in, like simplified Chinese or Arabic, and they're like one or two keywords, and it's because when I put it into Google Translate, like, why did they show up? It was a translation of a word that the website was already showing up for. It just happened to be that that person's browser was set to a different language, so that Google still showed them the page because it was relevant. um, so you can't even have like your English language website show up with multiple languages as well, because
Right.
depending on how people set up. But if you are specifically going after like like, let's just use the French for the metaphor here, but or the example. And so if I was going after, like, say I had a French version of the website, what I would do is I would have it like I said at the start, fr dot domain,
Yeah.
and then I would get that domain on Google by themselves, right? So if you have subdomains, I would verify each subdomain on their own, especially if they're multi-language. And then
Yeah.
that way you can separate out where your English and your French are, how you're ranking for each.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let me just take a peek at my notes. I think we really quite raced through most of the stuff that I was looking for. So then when it comes to keyword research, it just works the same way as English. You figure out what you want to rank for.
Yeah.
You organize your content to rank for that or to speak to that, and then you track it and adjust it as you need to.
Yeah, I mean, there's still tools like Google Keyword Planner that still has language as an option. I just haven't really used it
Oh,
because there's
right.
no really
I
a
forgot
need
to
for it.
ask about Google Keyword Planner. I
So
got to
yeah,
put that on
Keyword
the
Planner
list.
definitely has like a English tab, and so that means that you can do multiple languages. So if
Yeah.
you are trying to again do keyword research in French, uh, I think they even separate Quebecois French from France,
Yeah.
because I know they do that with English as well. So you can definitely start ranking yourself in different ways or do that keyword research. Again, like we said, most tools are kind of built to be English because it's the lingua franca, like which in itself is a big irony, right? Calling itself like a Latin term for French language.
Right.
Um, so it's majority of the tools are going to be focused around, so like say a SEMrush. If you're doing keyword research on that, you're going to have a
Yeah.
really tough time with multi international.
Yeah.
Just they're so English focused that you're
Mhm.
going to have a tough time. Google is because they're trying to be everything to everyone. They do spend a lot of effort on Google Translate working well, and so you can do the keyword research relatively well. Um, uh, I would say that that's yeah, kind of one of the big focuses. I would say is just work within Google's tools. I think you'll have the easiest time.
Yeah.
Um, you'll also one other thing that's kind of that does show up I've seen is like if you have a search bar and Google GA4 will track what people search in that search bar uh, by uh,
Right.
by default, and you will definitely get some weird results in there. Again, going back to the person's browser is set to a different language, so the searchers like the thing they typed in is like in their own native language, and so it shows up as your search result, even though it like the website's being translated by Google, and so
Right.
yeah, you'll run into some weird edge cases like that. They're not super common. Again, if you're not like targeting a specific audience of like what X language native speakers,
Mhm.
it won't show up as much, but it definitely is a possibility.
Okay. So what about off-page SEO besides Google listings? Sorry, Google business, I
Business,
guess
yeah,
Google business listings. It's the same strategy. We're going to look for business listings. We're going to look for
yeah,
link backs, like quality link backs for our site in French to deal with the French pages or the French website.
yeah. Because like in my mind, when you're doing like so, if you're doing directories and stuff like that, where there's your business is going to be listed, um, you probably have your own campaign for French speaking portion, and then that's going to be on the
Mhm.
French written directories. And then the only difference would be you don't want to direct people to the homepage, you direct people to the French, either
Individual
French
pages. Yeah.
homepage, or
Yeah.
if it's a French office that, or
Mhm.
like a French speaking office, then you would direct them to that page. So it could
Mhm.
either be like domain dot whatever slash uh, Quebec City office, just as an
Right.
example. And so that would be, you would direct people there because that's going to be translated into French, and so they could see that it's in, for French speakers on that side. Um, and you'll probably have a different phone number if you're natively speaking in French. Uh,
Right.
and so that's like a just making sure that when you do the NAP, that it's all set up for the French speaking office and it's got the French speaking page, all
Yeah.
that stuff, and phone
And
number.
just to remind the newbies, what is NAP?
Oh, name, address, phone number.
So we're
So
talking about the format that
yeah,
those things are put in. Is it still required that they need to be exactly the same everywhere?
I mean, Google says that it doesn't, but I don't believe them because they're a blunt force instrument, right? Like the
Yeah.
way computers work, they don't like
Yeah.
variation. Like that's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
So they can. Google says to the high heavens, "Oh no, no, we've got all this stuff figured out." But like, I'm figuring that just the nature of how much processing power they need to go through all the data that's on the internet, the easier
Mhm.
we make it, the easier time we're gonna have.
Right.
That's just
Right. So
kind of
clarity is king.
yeah, exactly, and consistency, because
Yeah.
computers love consistency. It just makes coding going over code easier, right? If everything's the exact same. So what I'm saying is that if you have your name, address, phone number, you want to highlight it, hit Control C or Command C to copy it, and then paste that exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you type it out, you're more likely to make mistakes. Uh,
Okay,
take
cool. Sorry.
I was
I
gonna
have
say
a
take
one.
it from. I was gonna say sorry. Just take it from a guy that spent hours trying to go over a code base to find out that I missed a period.
Oh,
And
that's so annoying. I've been there. It's like, what is wrong with this?
yeah, yeah.
You know.
So
Yeah, so there's one other question that I'm wondering about in that, because part of creating blog posts is to distribute those blog posts through
mhm,
a newsletter and through social channels. So with social channels, I've always been of the mindset that people get offered up Google Translate when they have the right when they have their settings set correctly on the website. So I'm always telling people to put out their content and allow Facebook Translate to translate the posts and not worry about it too much, because I was seeing for a while there were some people that were actually translating their statuses into French, and so they'd have but then Facebook would automatically translate, so you get two versions almost identical, maybe not quite exactly right. And so you get two versions of the French on Facebook when you're reading.
hmm.
Um, but what do you do? So that makes sense when you have only an English page to translate on your website. But if you're actually writing up the oh, I see. Because so yeah, so how does it work with the link back? So if I'm using an English, like I have to choose between the English or the French to share, right?
Yeah, that's my
Basically.
understanding. Is that
So
they make you choose
so
a language.
so that makes for a really interesting social conundrum that I have not yet come across a company that does that. So would you run socials in another language? Would that be the answer in that case? If you weren't if you weren't relying on Google Translate, because Google Translate is pretty much covered
Yeah.
by the English version. So, but if you had a second translation that actually came up, you would need to put out those web pages somehow.
Yeah, if you're gonna be posting about it, those pages, again, I would look for a native speaker of that language, and
Mhm.
especially because like social
Oh,
media is
absolutely. I wouldn't trust translators to do that type of work. But I
yeah.
guess what I'm getting at is that you really do need to run you really
Okay.
do need to either run them, or you need to do the Canadian um, public um, public institution, where they're putting one post in French and the next post in English and vice versa
Yeah.
along the way. So that would be one way, and you would share the right page, the right yeah,
So
that's interesting, because I like, if you follow, Mark Carney or his social pages, I've seen that where they do the English and then the French, but then Google translates the French into English for me, but then the website's in French. I get it. Okay, so that
yeah.
makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
that's kind of the way you would look at it. Is
Yeah.
a lot of these tools like to just auto translate for you. It's not always.
Yeah, but I guess my question really isn't about that. My question really is about when do you decide to run two social media channels? So with Canadian official spaces, it's normal for us to see French and English in the same space. We're used to it. We expect it.
Hmm.
But if you're running something else, some service-based website, and you want to have it translated, like I was working with someone that had a translated Spanish website, for example.
Mm.
So I think that what they ended up doing is running social media in Spanish on separate accounts. But I just don't know if that makes a difference for SEO in any way. I can't think of a social difference except for splitting your audience creates different metrics and different algorithmic situations. But other than that, but that should be fine, technically speaking.
Yeah, like to
That's
my
something
understanding.
I need to. I'm going to look more into that because I
Yeah,
need to
it's
now.
a
Now you got me thinking.
yeah. I think that it's one that I don't- it's complicated. I think that the moment at which I would be thinking about doing any sort of like social posting in another language, I would already have like committed to spending the resources on being in that language in those markets, talking to those people, because again, like it's when you're getting started and you're like, is this going to be a good match? Am I going to invest all these resources? And you can use Google Translate for the start. But if you're really like, okay, I really want to break into Mexico or I want to break into Quebec, and so I'm going to need to have a page in Spanish or in French, and so that's when you're going to commit those resources to actually like really having things properly translated. You probably have a team member that's in that language as a salesperson, so then they know the language, how to translate what you're saying about in English from your business into something that's going to be in Spanish or in French, and so that
Right.
you're at by the time that you're in a position where you need to be thinking about socials, I'm going to assume that you already have like the team and set up for this part, because
Yeah.
it's so because online is so dominated by English language that if you are actually doing native speaking multi language, you're going to be in a position that you have the team to help you with actually doing those posts and doing the translation, and they know
Yeah.
what the vibe of whatever business
For sure.
you're trying to promote.
For
Um,
sure. Okay, so we covered a lot. Were there any last minute things that that you think we missed or that I forgot to ask you about?
so we talked about like translate on the page. So it's one
Mhm.
that comes up with Shopify has a lot of this, because there's a lot of people that will sell in have French and Spanish, because they're selling in across North America, so Mexico and Quebec gets included. So there's apps out there that can help you with that as well, and they have the kind of the drop down. So you'll see up at the top it's like English and then French or Spanish, and so those will help with some of your translations. Again, you want to verify these things. Google Translate is kind of an auto service that the browser will provide, but there are like Languify, I think is the name of the app, because it's Shopify apps and they're all named like that. And so those will do the translation. Um,
Mm.
they can, so those are good options as well. So if you're doing e-commerce in multiple languages, that's one way to do it as well. Um, one other thing is that you could have IP bound IP bound domains. So if I go to Shopify, I get forced to go to shopify.ca. If I'm in the States, I go to shopify.com, and if I'm in the UK, I go to shopify.co.uk. So it's not
Yeah.
even a language
Oh,
thing.
right.
It's a
Domain. Yeah.
IP, like if you're coming
Yeah.
from that X country, you're gonna
Yeah.
go see this domain of the website. So very common for really big companies like Google and Shopify to do as well. Um,
Right.
so those are options as well that people
I
do.
think you have to be a registered business in those countries in order to access those domains in some cases. Is that's what I understood?
Definitely like .ca, you have to be
Yeah.
like for Canada, you have to be
Yeah,
registered
and I'm
in
pretty
Canada.
sure in Europe it's a lot like that too. Maybe other places they're not so specific, but they are highly regulated extensions.
Yeah, yeah. The name for that last bit is called top level domain. That's why
Yeah.
there's like .biz, .coffee, .rocks,
Yeah.
and then all the countries. So IO, um, to my understanding, is uh, the only country that's not the case. So .io is the only place that's not somewhere you have to be registered for, because they wanted a bunch of money, and so
Oh, I
.io
didn't think I thought .io was not a country code. I thought it a domain. I thought it was for technology.
that is a very common
'Cause I
perception of
just
it,
looked at
because
I just bought one. Did I buy? I just bought one the other day, and so I looked it up to see what it was, and I bought one for a client, and it says it's reserved for technology.
.io is international overseas British territories is what it's.
Really? Okay,
Yeah,
because that's not what my Google
they
results
sold the
come up.
rights to it. Basically, they wanted to raise money, and so they sold it a long time ago. .io that anyone in technology could get it.
Oh, I
Uh,
see.
yeah, it's
I
just a
see. Okay, you
fun.
had me Googling mid podcast here.
Yeah, uh, and so yeah, no, it's definitely it's a weird one. It's one that I just
Right.
looked it up because I was like .io, that's weird. Like that has to be tied to a country, and then it's international overseas British territories, which is like
I see.
St. George and what's Falklands, like all those
Yeah.
places, like
Yeah.
uh Tacunia. There's like another little
Yeah. The
island.
protectorate. They're protectorates. I think they're technically called protectorates.
Protectorates. Yeah. So
Protectorates.
yeah. Yes, they are. And so yeah, but yeah. Anyway, those top level domains, yeah, you can get them if you're in operating in those countries. You have to have some sort of office there and follow the local rules, but it's not impossible to get. Uh, anyway, this has been a fun conversation on all the
Totally.
going into different countries and expanding your business.
Yeah.
And
All
so
right. So I learned a lot. Thank you so much for sharing that with me because this is definitely not my expertise. And we're back to let's see here. Oh, I usually do the exit and I'm mucking it up again already.
yeah,
So basically, we're coming back every Thursday. We usually go live at 11 o'clock. We'll see if we can get the technology working for us for next week. We are in the Facebook Business Marketing Mixer group. If you'd like to join us there to find some marketing community. Otherwise, find us wherever you stumbled upon us today, next week at 11 for a replay. And or live, live or
yeah,
replay. And our next topic is I had
is
it up. Here it
WordPress
is.
hosting.
All right.
Mm,
WordPress hosting with you and Greg. So join us next week at 11. And in the meantime, have a great week. Thanks, guys.
bye for now.